Hello, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and we are ending eating disorders using nothing but our brains. And welcome to another live feed. Really excited to have you guys here. And we have something really fun that we're talking about today. So you might have heard me talk about this in bits and pieces, but I'm just going to lay it all out here because this is such a great way to understand really how our brain changes, how to change our brain, how that works. And so we're going to be talking today about the best way to understand how to change your brain, the sled analogy. Now, this is not an analogy that I came up with, but it is one that we're going to adapt so you can understand how this works with eating disorders and how to really change things long term. This is permanent brain change, because a lot of times we feel like, oh, well, we have an eating disorder, and so that's just the way that it's going to be, and that's just the way that I am. You might have even heard people say, I'm wired that way. And brain wiring, when we talk about that, there's this idea that here's an inherent thing, like I came to the world this way, this is the way that I'm wired, this is just the way that I am. But there's something called neuroplasticity that there's more and more just clear evidence about, is that the brain changes itself. The brain is in a constant state of change. And when we know how to change our brains, we can rewire our brains to be something that serves us better. And the only reason that you are in a cycle of disordered eating, whether that's binge eating, bulimia, body obsession, body hate, food obsession, all of that, overeating, emotional eating, I'm a chocoholic, whatever that is, it is just a brain wiring issue. Like your brain is wired that way because it's a habit that you've created. And we can rewire our brains. We can change our brains when we know how. So this today is going to be a really clear analogy and example of how this works. Now, this analogy comes from a book, which is awesome. I'd highly recommend it. It's called The Brain That Changes Itself. And it is by Norman Doidge. I don't say author names out loud very often. I just say them in my mind. So if somebody knows how to pronounce that, feel free to correct me. But it's called The Brain That Changes Itself. And he talks about this sled analogy that just illustrates so well how neuroplasticity works. So again, neuroplasticity is the ability for our brains to change. And when we know how to change our brains, then we can do that in a purposeful way. And for the purposes of what we do here, we're going to talk about how to do that in a purposeful way to change your eating disorder so you don't have an eating disorder anymore. You don't know how to resist your eating disorder. You don't know how to not act on your eating disorder. You just don't have an eating disorder anymore. And this is something that we've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I have seen it in my own life. I was a binge eater, bulimic for years, and it was a constant thought process of obsessing with food, thinking about food. When am I going to eat next? How am I going to not overeat? What am I going to do? Oh, hi guys, so fun to see you on. Feel free to make little comments, ask questions. Hearts and smiley faces always welcome. Thumbs up as well. So thank you guys for being here. Hi, so fun to see you on. So with that, there was a time in my life where I could not imagine it otherwise. I could not imagine not being obsessed with food. I could not imagine food not being a big deal. I could not imagine having just one cookie and then not wanting 14 more. It was so much better for me at that time, I thought, to not have any sugar, to not have any flour, to not have anything sweet, to not have anything with carbs. Because if I had one, I would want so much more. It was easier for me to just abstain and not do it. But that was just a little easier, right? It was all still hard. I was thinking about it all the time. Now, of course, I was trying to avoid it. But if I could have, man, I would have just binged all day long. It was this extremely strong desire. So this is how it feels now. You couldn't pay me to binge. If you, I don't know, if you paid me $5,000, if you paid me, it's just silly. It's like thinking of, you couldn't pay me to binge. I don't want to binge. If I had the chance, if food had no calories, I wouldn't binge. It is averse to me. It is unpleasant to me. It is, why would I do that? And this is not something that I'm trying to feel. This is a completely natural knee-jerk reaction to my new desires because I've rewired my brain. And we see this over and over. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the sled analogy and really how to understand this. So this is how to rewire your brain. Imagine you're on a snowy hill, all right? You're on a snowy hill and you have a sled at the top. And you get on the sled and you go down the hill, right? So the hill was all just covered with white snow, right? Like there were no tracks in it besides maybe where you walked up. And you're going down this hill for the first time. And you go down in one way, right? And when you get back up to the top of the hill, then you go down and you might go down in another way because it's just a clean hill full of, freshly fallen snow. So you can go one way or you can go the other. But here's the thing. If you start going one way, one path down the hill, and you walk up to the top of the path, and you go down the same path again, and you go back up to the top of the hill, and then you go down the same path, what happens is that you start making a really clear groove in the snow, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and it gets wider and wider and wider. So before, when you could just go to the top of the hill, and maybe you'd go down one way, or maybe you'd go down the other, what happens is that now there is no other way to go down. Like if you go to the top, that groove is so deep and it's so wide that if you go down the hill in your sled, you are absolutely, even if you're a little bit off, you are absolutely going to go down that same deep groove that you have created by the repetition of going down the hill that way over and over. That's how your brain works. Before you have a habit, it's just sort of like freshly fallen snow. Like, oh, you can do one thing, you can do another. But once you do something repeatedly, stress binge, stress binge, stress binge. I'm alone, I binge, I'm alone, I binge, I'm alone, I binge. What happens is that is a deep habit and a groove in your brain. Oh, so glad this is helpful, you guys. Hi there. It's this deep groove in your brain where that's always going to feel like that's the only way to go. You guys, especially, if you've been dealing with this for a while, you might know exactly what that feels like. Like maybe you'll go all day, but then as soon as you get to that point where you're at the top of the hill and you're going down and something familiar happens that's really that deep groove, like, okay, well, I'm alone and everyone's gone and the kids are in bed and I have one, piece of chocolate. And then it feels like there is nothing else that you can do. You're already going down the hill. You're already riding the sled. Like you're not going backwards, right? It's like, it feels inevitable. That's where that hijacked feeling comes from of like, I can't do anything else. Like I just have to eat the rest of the chocolate. I just have to get rid of it and then start over tomorrow. All of that is part of creating that deep groove. And we'll do that for 10 years and then we'll do that for 20 years. And that becomes just a deeply ingrained habit in our brains. So it happens when certain things, certain circumstances, certain feelings, it doesn't matter what it is. That's another important thing to realize. There's nothing wrong with you, right? It's nothing about being alone at night. It's just whatever you've done before, your brain is going to reinforce doing again. And maybe, like you want that to change, but it just feels so permanent and it happens over and over. So your brain will even start expecting it. Like, oh no, it's time, or oh yay, it's time if we get excited about it. A lot of times it's this love-hate relationship of like, oh good, everyone is going to bed so I can binge. And oh no, everyone is going to bed and I'm gonna binge. It's like both at the same time. Yeah, absolutely, you guys. You're saying like, or possibly 60 years in some cases, right? And so yes, I'm so glad this is helpful. So all it is it's creating that deep groove in your brain and are reinforcing it over and over. But you are reinforcing it over and over. It's not this inherent thing where like, oh, you're wired that way. I guess you're just messed up for the rest of your life. It's just that you've created that path in the snow, in your brain, over and over and over. And it keeps getting stronger. And the feeling is so familiar that it haunts you, right? It's like, oh no, it's happening again. I'm going to be alone and it's at night and I'm going to binge. So in 6 months or whatever, you have 10 things that are that way. Now you can't be alone. And now you can't be stressed. And now you can't have a hard day at work, and now you can't be feeling uncomfortable in your body that day, because these have all created these deep grooves where it feels like we can't do anything except follow out and carry on and do the same thing that we've done every time, because it's so deep and it's so wide, that groove that we've created in that hill of snow. And your whole life starts feeling like a minefield. It starts feeling like there's no way that I can even get through a day, because now so many things send me off. So many things make me go down this same path, and it starts feeling really powerless. I remember being so terrified. Like I was trying to just control everything, because now I have to not be alone, and now I have to not ever be stressed, and now I have to never have a bad day at work, or I am powerless. And because of that feeling of powerlessness, then it starts making us feel like we're just that way. And it's simply not true. It's just a deep groove that has been created. And the really hard thing is that before you know how to get out, those things happen so much, and your life just becomes like, everything is a trigger, if you will, to set you off, that your life just starts getting really, really small. We start giving up on things that we love. We stop, doing the things that make us happy, because if any of them become that deep groove where we just go down all the way to binging, then it's doom, right? And so our lives really do get very, very small, and our whole lives become trying to avoid these things. So here is the key, you guys. We know how the brain works. We know how that neuroplasticity works. We create those grooves in our brain. And here's the key that our clients find out early on, that it's still snowing. That's the thing that we forget. It's still snowing the whole time. Your brain is changing all the time. It just doesn't feel like it, because you're changing your brain in the same way over and over and over. What we're doing before was we were focusing on not going down the hill, right? Have you had that feeling where you're like, oh, just don't binge, just don't binge. I just got to get through this night. I just got to not binge tonight. I just got to be able to go to bed. And then maybe once in a blue moon, we have this victory where we overcome it. And then it feels even worse when we can't take it anymore, and we go and we sled down the hill, and it leads to the same exact thing. And it's like, well, what was the point of trying to use all this willpower to not do it this one time? Because at any time when I let go, at any time when I let my guard down, then you're just going down that same path. Don't binge, don't binge, don't binge, don't binge. You're just standing at the top of the hill, just trying so hard. But the minute that anything happens where you're not quite as strong, I'm putting that in quotes, and you don't quite have the willpower, because willpower never lasts, you will go down that same path, because you've carved it so deep, there's nowhere else to go. So even if you wait for a little while, even if you can, put all of these barriers in place so you don't binge that one day or that one time, there's still only one groove to go down. So as soon as something happens, you're going to go down it again, and it feels awful. It feels like a failure. It feels like even worse than it did before, because now you had a couple of good days, and I guess nothing changed. So here is the key. Instead of trying to go down or not go down the hill, you start going another way. You create a new path. And once you know how to turn around your sled at the top of the hill and go down a different way, then you start carving a new path. But this is a specific process. This is a huge focus of what we do to help people, because it's not intuitive. In fact, some of the ways that people need to turn around their sleds and go down a different path are the exact opposite of what they thought they should be doing. The exact opposite. It's not always an intuitive thing, because your brain wants to protect you going down that same path over and over. But if you have that help to know for you specifically in your life how to turn around the sled and go down a different path that doesn't involve binging, that you can do at any time in the day without needing any sort of circumstances, then you start carving a new path. And it not only gets deeper and deeper with that other path that you're creating that serves you, that feels good, that isn't binging, but remember, it's still snowing. So if you can be going down a different path and not reinforcing that first one, and it's still snowing, guess what eventually happens? Both paths after a while get even, right? They're just as deep and they're just as wide. So maybe, you could go either way, but the one that you've been taking over and over, the one that you decided, the one that you had the help in creating so you know how to do something else, well, that one is the one that has an advantage because this other one is getting snowed over while you do something new. And you know what? When one path is there and the other one still kind of exists, if you go down the other one every once in a while, like, no big deal. You're still doing something different. You're still getting the practice. You're still doing the principles that you need to for your life to reinforce something else. So if you have a fluke where it's like, oh, weird, like I went down a different path. Oh, well, you're still making progress, but you can never make that new progress when you're just trying to not go down the old path. You have to create that new connection in your brain. So let me give you an example of how this shows up. So when both paths get sort of even, right? So when we're teaching our clients how to make that new path in their brain and they still have the old one, but it's still snowing on both sides of the hill, right? You may go down accidentally on the other side at some point, right? And that's fine. This is how it comes up. What our clients say over and over is, oh, weird. That's so weird. I binged. It felt totally different. And like I ate less and I knew what was happening. I was just surprised. Like it felt weird. It felt really unnatural. Like before I used to just be like totally out of it and hijacked. But this time I was like, oh, I see what's happening. And wow, that's so weird that I binged. Because it starts feeling different. You're going down this path where it had lots of snow on it and you've been doing something else and it's still been snowing this one over. So if you accidentally switch over, it's just like, oh, that's so weird. So it starts feeling weird because you're creating a new normal. You're creating a new path of ease in your brain. You're creating a new path of least resistance because you know how to do that. You have the help to know how to do that. And because our brains are happy to change, you can change them in a new way. So you just keep carving this new path and you keep putting that practice into place. And then after a while, when it continues to snow and that old path is snowed over and your new path is established, that includes being able to have one cookie and move on, that includes being able to just go throughout the day and not even think about food. That includes being able to, at any time, if you're feeling wobbly or if you're feeling nervous or if you're feeling like, oh, it might happen, oh, you know exactly what to do, to just go down that new path. That path that if you went down that one for the rest of your life, you'd get healthier and healthier and healthier. Once that's established and it's snowed enough and you know what to do, then you can look at the rest of the hill and you don't even know where the old path was. You don't even know where the binge path was. You can't even recognize where you used to go down the hill back when you binged. And this is what it sounds like. Our clients start saying, I can't believe I used to feel that way. Wow, why was food such a big deal before? Like, did I really struggle that much? Like, why did I think about it all the time? I can't believe I used to not be able to even go out to eat without looking at the menu online or at the restaurant 10,000 times and I couldn't focus on anyone. I can't believe that I used to, sit with my kids and think about food. Like, wow, I have a hard time remembering even what that felt like. Like food is just not a big deal anymore. That's what it sounds like, you guys. When you use these principles to change your brain and really be done with an eating disorder, it does not have to be a struggle for the rest of your life. When you know what to do, then you can change your brain. Your brain is happy to do it. Hi, so fun to see you guys. Hello. So you guys, like that analogy, I hope that helps you to understand really how your brain works and how that can be used to change your circumstances. But I totally understand if the things that you've been trying, you're like, oh, I keep on going down that same path. Like it's not always intuitive. So what we have for you is in the next 48 hours, I think there are still a few openings. If you go to lydialifestyle.com/apply, you can book a free session with us. And we are going to essentially get you on the right path talk about how to turn around that sled for you in your life. We're going to get clear on exactly why you keep going down that same path. We're going to get clear on really what freedom means for you. And we're going to get clear on any missing pieces that you need to put the things in place so that you can have freedom for the rest of your life. Again, it's lydialifestyle.com/apply. That will get you there. There's just a little calendar page. If you can find a spot, just snag it. If not, get on the waiting list and we'll let you know as soon as we have more openings. We get booked very quickly. But again, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach. So fun to see you guys all on. Thanks for being here, and mwah, bye.